please state your full name and title?
Richard Allen Foster, running for mayor of Goleta.
And why are you running for office?
Basically, I think they've been spending money poorly. We have too many capital improvement projects that are underfunded by, over the next 5 years, $140 million. Long-term, $470 million. We have a bicycle path that's up to $50 million. Why we can't build Fire Station 10. So it really comes down to a matter of how we're spending our money and why our roads, our infrastructure is decaying rather rapidly. They're not getting funding enough for that.
Okay, and what does Goleta mean to you?
Well, Goleta's home. It's one of the greatest spots to live. There's a lot of people all over the world that would love to live here, which is also one of our problems because it's such a great spot. A lot of people want to move here, and it's driving up housing costs. People can tell them they can remote work to come here. And so that's a whole nother issue later on, but that is one of the downsides. But we got mountains, we got oceans, we have great stores, and it's just a great place to live.
What makes you qualified to be mayor?
I suppose that depends on who you ask. But I've been following city politics for a very long time. I've shown up many, many times to public meetings to comment on different issues. Been asked in the past by former council member Sevis, former council member Bennett, why I wasn't running. And at the time I said, well, there's not that many issues that worry me. But now the finances and the road conditions has motivated me to get off my sofa and run. I'm good on numbers. I followed the issues. I was a contractor. I'm used to problem solving. I think I can do the job.
What are the major issues that impact Goleta residents?
Well, I touched on that a little bit. Bad roads, sidewalks, and bikeways affects all of our residents. Whether you're on a bike or you're walking, and just grinding a hump down in the sidewalk is not really fixing the problem. You know, putting some cold patch in a hole doesn't fix the problem. Right now, this year they say they're spending $7 million. Just to stay right where we're at, we need to be spending $7.7 million. So people, when they leave their house, look at the street and say, is this what I want for my road? And the other problem is a lot of money is being spent on projects such as this week, they're turning ground on the $32 million train station. 2 million people commute in New York every day from a platform just like what we have. Was that the best expenditure of money, even though it's 17 or 18 million if it's coming from SB So the road condition, the spending, the long-term indebtedness, just this past week they moved forward with a joint powers agreement, the point of which is you can then start writing bonds and loans with very little local oversight. They're only overseen if it's a vertical joint powers agreement. And so what this is a way is to place our future generation in debt to take care of things we didn't take care of today, like the crib wall on Cathedral Oaks or the bike path that they want to continue building.
And how do you plan to address the impact of inflation on Goleta residents?
Well, it's not a lot of effect in terms of the total economy, but the best way you can benefit the residents of Goleta is to keep our spending down so we don't have new taxes. 2 years ago, we voted for B 2022 to raise sales tax by 1%. That was going to cure all of our problems. Originally, they said, 50% to roads, then it was 10% to roads, and then it was nothing to roads for the first 6 months. If we can get costs down where we're not looking for new ways to do it, our finance office's strategic goal, one of their goals, is to figure out how to raise tax revenues. That's not an answer that benefits the residents of Goleta. Far better to cut services, eliminate projects that we can't afford so that we can live within our means.
If elected, how do you plan to improve life in Goleta?
Well, sort of some of the things we just talked about is that by dropping priorities, CIP projects, capital improvement projects that were underfunded, that will long-term free up money. At first, we'll have to give some money back. But the problem with grants are, once you've signed on, you agree to build them no matter how bad the numbers get. So the bike path, and it was 20 million of grants money and 2 million from the city. Then it was more. Now it's 30 million from the city. So if we stop that kind of spending, we can take care of the basics in our city, have good roads, have good sidewalks. Also like to see if there's a possibility when we get to the housing section of things we can do to encourage housing for our fire service, police service people.
How will you address the housing crisis in Goleta?
You know, there's a housing crisis across the whole nation right now. And part of that is we had very low inflation for a decade or so, and people are playing catch up. Part of it is that there's some large corporations that are gaming the system with software that actually helps them jack up rents. Right now there's a Department of Justice lawsuit down in Texas about that very thing. Locally, the problem is we are a desirable place, and not everybody's going to be able to afford to live there. I don't want to sound elitist. A lot of people who are living here are making huge sacrifices to stay here. We're not talking 30%, we're talking 50% more of your income going to it. I think a couple things we could consider doing. The idea behind ADUs and behind bonus density units was that these would create more housing, but do they really create economically affordable housing? I would favor the possibility of looking into a rent control, rent cap on new ADUs and on bonus density units. You have the original amount that you have to do just to meet requirements, but bonus density allows them to go up to 50% more. Those should be the ones that are affordable, and so then the developer can decide whether it pencils out. The homeowner can decide whether they want to defer some of their return. But I think a rent cap on that. Other than that, I don't support rent control.
What do you believe the major crime issues are in Goleta, and how do you plan to address them?
It's a lesser one. Probably the major crime is kids on e-bikes right now, the way they drive. But I've talked to some of the police officers, and their opinion was that there is a substantial problem with fentanyl and with methamphetamine in our community, which then of course spills over into other crimes. If you look at the statistics for crime, we actually live in a pretty safe place. There's, I think last year, 36 assaults. I'm not sure how many of those were the same guys assaulting each other. Any crime's a problem. Probably the most common occurrence is somewhat burglary, but more just plain theft. And what people can do is keep their garage doors closed, use their locks. Don't leave your computer, laptop in your car. It's a degree of taking responsibility to avoid. We'll always have people who are going to commit crime. The people can reduce it themselves by being alert, and I think neighborhood watch is a good thing too. If you see something that looks bad, call the police.
What do you hope to accomplish in 2025 if elected in November?
I'd like to kill some of our capital improvement projects that are on hold by returning the money. They like to say, if we return a grant, we'll never get a grant again. At this point, they're so far in the hole on it, they'd be better off not getting grants for a while. I would like to see where we clear the decks on some of those, where we don't have the commitments. I would also like to see the funding for our roads to go up at a bare minimum to hold our own, the $7.7 million. Stuart Kazan had a proposal a while back that I thought was good. He suggested borrowing $70 million so we can catch up, because we're $65 to $70 million down on road work right now. But the problem with that is if you borrow that money, you have to have a plan to pay it back. And so the idea would be to long-term be looking at expenditures on projects and only building those things we need, not boutique projects that sound nice, train stations, whatever, but aren't really meeting a need.
What actions will you take to address the political divide in Goleta?
I think that's more of a national issue than locally. I've spoken to Republican groups. The Democrats actually won't interview you if you're not a Democrat, so I changed to no preferred party. But I have supporters that are Democrats, I have supporters that are Republican, and so you'll see my sign next to somebody else's sign. But on local issues, the center of the road is where it's at, that most people agree that we need to take care of our infrastructure. We want to keep spending down, we don't want to raise taxes, and largely social issues don't enter in a whole lot into the city.
And is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to address?
Well, it's something I'd like to push. On September 21st, we've organized an open microphone event at the Goleta Community Center from 6 to 8 on Saturday the 21st. All the candidates have been invited. I'm not sure they're all going to show up, but it will just simply be a microphone where residents can stand there and ask whatever question they want. And we're not talking long speeches from candidates, we're talking about them responding to people in the community. So I'd love to see people turn out for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Rich. Thanks for joining. I have one final question for you today regarding Old Town. And Old Town is a controversial topic right now. Some owners say the restriping has put a strain on their businesses. How would you address this issue?
Yeah, I've actually spent quite a bit of time walking Old Town, talking to merchants, both before they did it and now. The city's, I believe, is going to be looking at this again on October 1st because a number of business owners showed up 2 weeks ago to say that their business is hurting, whether that's because bad traffic's backing up during the work or other things. I do know there's about 34 businesses at the eastern end of town where the way it's striped in the middle lane, you can't legally turn left into most of them and you can't turn left out of them. And that's caused some of their clients to say, well, it's getting difficult to get here. And I do think there's a fairly easy fix for that, which would be to restripe the middle lane so that it has the dash lines on the inside so that a vehicle can pull into that wherever they want. This would be sort of from Fuel Depot on down towards the community center. They could then enter parking lots. And if you were leaving those parking lots, you could hit the middle lane and keep on going. Will this solve all the problems with Old Town? Probably not, but I think in the short term, it will be a benefit to those merchants because they'll find it's easier for their employees to get there. Another issue, two issues that came up today in discussion is one that I've noticed late in the day when you have a lot of people crossing at Hollister Avenue at the community center, the pedestrian crosswalk comes on all the time. And that had traffic backed up for a couple blocks yesterday because of the frequency of it, even though they weren't backed up farther on up. So long term, they may have to be looking at some of the pedestrian crossing lights, how they work, and whether that's causing traffic to stack up. The big argument, 1 lane or 2 lanes, that time will tell on that. Lastly, something I was talking with city staff about is when you back into a diagonal parking spot, you have to stop and then back up in. And if there's traffic right behind you, you've now stopped traffic. Whereas if it's a diagonal parking spot, I can pull nose in, there's no delay on traffic. And when I actually go to leave, and there's arguments about visibility and whatnot, I have to wait until there is a break in traffic. So I think there's going to be, I think if the stripes went the other way, there'd be less interruption to traffic flow through there.
Thank you. And is there anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, go visit Old Town. The merchants down there need the business. I've been down there. I've had some good meals down there. Los Altos, Good Land Barbecue. I've talked to most of the merchants. So yeah, get on out there, visit them. I know they're trying to drum up local support during this time. And sometimes a day there's just a zoom right in and zoom right out. It's rush hour does the one where it backs up the most. So give people some patience.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you.